Welcome back, everyone, to the first episode of Wave 2 of the Clymire Podcast. I hope you guys liked the episode in Wave 1. If this is the first time you're listening to the podcast, please be sure to subscribe and leave a like. I'm very excited about the podcast and the direction it's going so far. Every new episode is a prototype for me, where I test what's working for me and what's not, such as the length of each episode, the talk flow, the volume, the background music, and other smaller issues. I got some feedback from you guys where I was told that the volume of the background music was a little too loud and that it's hard to concentrate on whether you're listening to me or whether you're listening to the music. I personally love the music in the podcast because it makes it more like a radio talk show, if you know what I mean. We'll be working on all these issues until we get there. Love the feedback. Please do keep sending me feedbacks and comment down below on what things to focus on and what can be better for the show. Thank you all for the support, and now let's get into the main topic of the day. Where does my name come from? Okay, first of all, I came to have a father last name until I was 5 years old. I'm going to tell you all the story behind it all, how it happened, why it happened, and what happened up until today. It all happened back in late 1999. I was 5 years old, as I mentioned, and my little brother had been brought to this world in May of the same year. We were going through a very rough time since my mother was lied to in the most inhuman, the most despicable way possible. The biological father of my little brother left my mother pregnant. During her pregnancy state, he went and married some random woman with who he also had a child with. Now keep in mind, both me and my brother, we come from the same mother, but our biological fathers are completely two different guys. My father in particular, I really do not know him, but that's gonna be another episode for another time. Well, anyways, that devastated my mom, but even so, she had my little brother and she overcame the circumstances. My mother had a second-hand clothing store, and that's how she was able to raise her two kids as a single mother. However, someone came into our lives and changed it in 180 degrees completely. And that person was none other than the man who would become the father figure that these two little kids did not have. But it didn't last long. Keep in mind that my little brother is only months old when this man came into our lives. One day, my mom decided that we should all go out for some food, and the place we were going to was a fast food restaurant that had just opened on the same year, if I remember correctly. This place is called Bojangles, and up until today, it's the most visited restaurant for local islanders and tourists in Roatan. I love Bojangles. Like, the first thing I go for every time I hit Roatan is Bojangles. That's a must. And I just love it. Love Bojangles. But anyways, that day when we arrived at Bojangles' front door, this tall, white male around his 50s had the courtesy of opening the door for this young single mother. But nothing really happened that day. It was days later when that same man just happened to show up in the small clothing store my mom had that things started to actually happen. No. He came frequently to the store and he always bought random stuff that we all knew he didn't need. I don't really know how he pulled it off because my mom spoke no English whatsoever and he didn't speak any Spanish. Next thing I knew, we moved into to live with him. That was the biggest house I had ever lived in. It was huge. And not to mention the property itself. It had another 3 houses spread around the perimeter. Houses that were mainly meant for rent. I had my own room full of toys and shit. I had never had so many toys in my life. This father figure's name was Perry George Clymire. He gave us his name without even flinching. He fell in love with my mom ridiculously fast. That was really the, and I quote, love at first sight type of shit. The support he gave us was unconditional. There were no limits with him. I remember that he also had jet skis, a red Jeep, a white pickup truck, a speedboat, and we also had a pool. It was pretty cool, to be honest. He had a couple of employees that did handiwork around the property, such as guards, gardeners, mechanics, and whatnot. For my brother's first year birthday party, he invested a lot of money on a huge party that I'm never going to forget. All my family were brought over with everything paid for: flights, food, ground transportation, house, etc. And by family, I mean my uncles, cousins, my family. There were 3 enormous birthday cakes to feed all the people that came to that party. There were so many people I had never even seen in my life before. It was ridiculous. My little brother has no memory whatsoever of the day. He doesn't even comprehend what a huge birthday party he had for his first year. A couple of months later, things between my mom and Terry were becoming very problematic. You never really know a person when you start dating them. Even if it's been a year or so, that person that you like and that you see as the one, that's not really them. That's just their representative for the occasion. With the passing of the time, you get to know the worst and darkest things that a person carries within them. Terry was no exception. He had serious mental issues. He was a war veteran from the Vietnam War. Now, if you know someone who went to war and came back, believe me when I tell you that they have serious mental issues because of the shit they did and the shit they saw. It's some serious shit. He couldn't sleep at night. He would go and check on the guards he had at 3 a.m. in the morning. And if they were asleep, he would take their bicycles and he would throw them into the bottom of the sea. In the morning, they would wake up and freak out as they looked for their bicycles. He would just point out to them where he left them and told them to not even bother coming back. Straightforward. But anyways, one day he came home on midday and saw that someone jumped over the fence, and he immediately chased after him and found out it was the guy he had assigned to fix the jet skis he had. The guy was stealing a blender from the house. A fucking blender. The amount of anger that was pouring out of this man's body was so extreme that beating the guy up was not nearly enough. He tied him up from his hands and his feet, and he tied him up from the rope in the Jeep he had, all the way to the closest police station in the island. This distance was about 5 miles away, on paved road, on a fucking paved road. By the time he got there, the guy's skin was ripped off his legs, his back, and his hands. This guy was in serious conditions. Obviously, the one who ended up in jail that night was him for his inhuman acts. There was also another time where he wanted to send me to the US Army as a child, but my mom was completely against the idea. I don't know what would I have been doing right now if I ended up as a soldier for the US Army. When I think about it, it just blows my mind of how little things like that can have a huge impact and change in a person's life, because I wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't because of my mom's decision on the matter. That was pretty much the last drop that filled the glass. My mom left him. She took her 2 kids and went back to her old apartment, which she still had, by the way. He was really stubborn, since he did not want to lose my mom by any chance, by any circumstance at all. She was the only thing that actually gave meaning to his life at that point. She knew that my mom knew that he was an imminent danger to us all. she decided to never go back there and to never see him again. Never ever have a relationship with him again in any ways at all. He tried to commit public suicide by shooting himself with his shotgun in the front of everyone unless my mom took him back. But he never had the balls to pull the trigger, and my mom would not give in into his threats. He even tried to make my mom's life impossible when she tried to open her store every day. It was only a matter of time before he gave up on all the hassle, and soon we weren't hearing from him at all. It was a couple of days later that he really committed suicide by overdosing on pills. He was found lying in his bed by one of his employees. At least that's what was believed. There was no note left, and the autopsy said he had signs of being choked and died from suffocation, as if somebody choked him to death. His body was sent back to the United States, to the state of California, where he's originally from, and that's where he was buried, in a military grave. Everything he owned in Honduras was claimed by the government and put on an auction. Don't really know who went and became the owner of everything he had. And my mom, she was too young at the time, and she didn't really care about what rights her kids had. Hence, we carried his name, for crying out loud. Up until this point, I never got anything from him other than the name itself. I did not inherit anything at all. Well, that man was the only father figure I had. I grew up without ever really having a dad. This time with me, his time with me was just too short, and those are the only vague memories I have left of those times. That's how I ended up with the name, which, to be honest, I feel as if it was a gift that was meant to be for me and my little brother. We both had shitty ass fathers who never took the fucking responsibility, and that didn't even have the balls to give us their last name. Instead, they denied our very existence. It's rough, and it's something that only someone who's been in my shoes would ever understand the amount of pain and effect that has on a person, on an individual. But as I was growing up, I made friends who also went through the same pain, people who would understand me. Thank God that even though I had no father, I was blessed to have my mother. She gave everything for her kids. She overcame every obstacle, every circumstance, and rose above it all. It's because of her that I am who I am, and gave us everything we ever needed. If you have your parents right now, be grateful and show them how much you appreciate everything that they have done for you. For they're the only ones who care whether you eat, sleep, live, or die. If you never had a parent there for you, then be grateful to the person who took the role of a father or a mother in your life and actually gave a shit about you. Well, thank you all for tuning in into this episode. If you made it all the way to the end, please leave a like and comment down below. Feedbacks, and if there's a specific topic you would like to hear from me in the future, perhaps in Wave 3, it can be about anything, to be honest. It's open in the table. It can be about anything. Well, that's it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed my story. Subscribe if you haven't already, to get the news first of every new upload. Next episode is titled Growing Up Without a Father. The title speaks for itself. Tune in on Friday to check it out. Support the channel by visiting our Facebook and Patreon pages. Links are in the descriptions below. Also, if you like the music, make sure to visit and support the artist by clicking on the links below. Until next time, take care everyone. Bye bye.